Hello, everybody, and welcome to Navigating Tariffs and Trade across the Canadian Retail IT channel, a roundtable discussion presented by the Retail Solutions Providers Association's Canadian Community. I'm Jim Roddy, President and CEO of the RSPA. We are so glad that you are here today. Now, if you're not familiar with the RSPA, we're North America's largest community of VARs, software providers, hardware vendors, service providers, and distributors in the retail, restaurant, and grocery verticals. We're a fit for any organization that's serious about growth in those markets. Now, many companies have been members for decades, and we frequently add startup tech companies because we accelerate their growth and they see the massive ROI that an RSPA membership offers. If you're serious about growth in the retail IT channel, email membership@gorspa.org. All right, so before we talk tariffs, we just have a few highlights and updates to share with you. One is a reminder to all our members about RSPA White Glove service. You see on the left side of your screen, there's the long list of RSPA member benefits, and there's even a longer list of member companies. We now have over 750 different member organizations. And instead of having members join the association and just navigate everything on their own, we provide white glove service through the member services team of Peggy Fry and Nicole Green. And so if you are a current RSPA member, lean on Peggy, lean on Nicole. They will help you navigate everything inside the association. And if you look at the third bullet point on there, one of the most popular services we offer are warm introductions to RSPA members. You talk with Peggy or Nicole about the type of, whether it's a VAR or ISV or vendor or distributor or payments company that you're looking to talk with and connect with, they will on your behalf make a warm introduction for you. So again, if you're not a member, email membership@gorspa.org and we'll connect you with RSPA White Glove service. And if you are a member, we would love to have you more involved, and that's that same email, membership@gorspa.org. All right, speaking of Nicole Green, let's welcome Nicole. Nicole, can you give everybody an update on the RSPA Inspire Leadership Conference? Hey, Nicole.
Hi, Jim. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being with us today. We are super excited about Inspire. That is coming up February 1st through 4th. So in 93 days, and now that it's starting to get a little chilly, bet we're all going to be looking forward to some warmer weather soon. So we're really excited. This, for those that don't know what Inspire is or has not been to Inspire before, this is our annual leadership, so executive networking conference that we host every year. So the first half of the day is dedicated to education round workshops that are going to be covering AI, leadership, and then VAR/ISV value propositions. And then the second half of the day is going to be dedicated to networking. And so we have, for those that are planning on attending, we all have already filled about 75% of our room blocks. So we do encourage you to please go and book your rooms if you're planning on attending. And if you are attending for the first time, feel free to reach out to membership@gorspa.org. We will have a special code for you to register with. It's a discount code. We would love to see as many of you as possible at Inspire. And then I would love to move on and thank our sponsors. Unless, Jim, did I miss anything on Inspire that you would have covered as well?
No, you got it. Looking forward to seeing everybody there.
Wonderful. I would like to thank our sponsors. First, let's thank our annual sponsors. So Platinum being Blue Star, Gold is CoCard, Epson, Heartland, and ScanSource. Silver is Microtouch, Round2 POS, Star Micronics, and Verifone. And then bronze sponsors being AutoStar, CRS, DataCap, Food Hub, Kitchen Armor, Corona POS, Landy, Logic Controls, MS Cash Draw, National Retail Solutions, Order Counter, Pekin POS, Shift4, TD Synnex, Tonic, Toshiba, Touch Dynamics, and Diebold Nextdoor. Thank you all so much for the sponsorships. We could not do what we do without all of you, so we really appreciate that. And then we have sponsors specific to the Canadian community. So Blue Star, Citizen, DataCap Systems, Heartland, Ingenico, National Retail Solutions, Partner, Tech, Shift4, Star Micronics, and Toshiba. Thank you so much for all of your support, specifically to the Canadian community. And if anybody is interested in being a sponsor, we would love you to reach out to membership at gorspa.org. We can provide you some more information. And if you're looking to connect with these wonderful sponsors, also reach out to that email address and we can get you connected with them as well. And Jim, I will turn it back over to you.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Nicole. So here's how today's roundtable is going to work. Our moderator, who I'm going to introduce shortly, will conduct a Q&A with our expert panel. After their discussion, you can participate in an open forum roundtable discussion, ask your question or share your comment through the GoToWebinar platform, and we'll call on you and unmute you so you can interact with the panel. And I also have to mention this, one of the many services the RSPA offers is a legal advisor. That's a free service we provide to our members. And she asked me to say, this will be an open forum information sharing discussion. Please note the views and opinions expressed during this roundtable are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Retail Solution Providers Association. All right. Please welcome today's moderator, the President and CEO of Globe POS Systems and a member of the RSPA board, Paul LeDuc. Hey, Paul.
Hello. Welcome, everybody. Today's conversation comes from a lot of the resellers and some of the manufacturers that are starting to ask a lot of questions about bringing products to the market in the Canadian environment. We're seeing a lot of changes in the way product flows, the way we purchase products. So we decided to put together a panel of experts, of people that deal with this on a regular basis, and put some questions together based on the input from the members. So let's get started. Our panelist, Candace Snyder is the VP of Government and Regulatory Affairs for North America at Livingston International. Candace, I guess you have to unmute yourself. Well, welcome. Michel Sirois, President and CEO of Blue Star Canada, joined us as a distributor. Laura Coggins, who is the Senior Sales Executive for Partner Tech as a importers and manufacturer. Bob Flint, who's also joining us as Director of Sales Operations for Star Micronics. So welcome, everybody. And thank you for taking the time to maybe answer and clarify some of the questions from many of our members. So our first question is talking about the importers and the manufacturers. What are the challenges that you guys face on a regular basis to try to bring products to the market, not just in Canada, but from overseas? I'll start with Laura, who's representing a importer.
So thank you, Paul. My name is Laura Coggins with Partner Tech. And really, to be honest, the biggest thing that we are doing here at Partner Tech is we feel like it's our job to minimize the impact on all the VARs, right? As a manufacturer, we do have multiple manufacturing facilities, and we are very fortunate not to have just one, but we have multiple, including China and Taiwan. Taiwan being the majority of our manufacturing now. You can imagine if you think way back to COVID days, we had to do a lot of shifting of manufacturing then. We've done the same approach now, just to pick up that manufacturing and move it. There is a cost, there's planning, there's timing around all that. But we felt like it was very important to be able to have that shift to support the VARs, right, for the SMB business. It's allowed us to also lessen the tariffs when we're bringing those into the US marketplace. And we all know when those products hit the port, those tariff fees are due, right? It's not a just get it invoiced later and we pay for it later. We pay for it when it hits the dock, hits the port there in LA. And it's, one of those things that we're trying to do effectively, quickly, and be able to move the product and get it to the VARs as soon as possible.
Interesting. So how does that, asking Candace, how does that affect this entire process of clearing? How does that really affect the day-to-day process for a product to get are receiving doors?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. Excuse me, that's a great question. So our trade environment is precarious at best. 2025, we have seen a multitude of changes, which have really resulted in the industry constantly having to pivot and change and realign in terms of their importing program and how they import goods into the country. Sometimes the executive orders are dropped later in the day, and then the functional guidance that comes from CBP, which is so critical in order to properly implement, may not drop until Friday night at 10 o'clock, and we only have 1 or 2 days to implement. So we're really moving very quickly to notify importers of what those changes are. And to the previous comment made, you know, any IEEPA tariffs or any tariff goods that are subject to Section 232 or 301, or now the derivatives, which that inclusion is over 900 HS classifications, all has to be accounted for within that 10-day time frame and paid up front. So it is a real impact for many companies that virtually imported duty-free, and now all of a sudden they're seeing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Excuse me, I'm fighting a bit of a cold here. All of a sudden now they're being required to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. And how do they pass that on, or are they in a position to incur those costs? But at some point, margins aren't that broad, and they're either going to have to pass those additional fees on to ultimately the vendor or the ultimate end consumer, or do they decide not to import or import that kind of volume? So a lot of strategic decisions are being made for companies where typically they had a plan 3 years out, sometimes 6 months out. At this point, it's too far to gauge.
So going to Bob for a moment. So how does that affect your projection for productions and import before it hits North America? So talk to us about how does all these changes affects this entire process. Oh. Bob? Oh, I guess Bob was not able to join. I don't see him on the list. So Michelle, now all these fees have been added, all this processing delays have been added. How does a distributor manage this process in delivering to us? Like, how does that come to an end user after? How can you manage this process?
It has become very challenging, I've got to admit. You know, what COVID was the first hit that supply chain has encountered because of lack of components and whatnot. So manufacturers have reinvented themselves, right? And started procuring from multi-sources. Laura, you're familiar with what I'm saying here. So that was one dynamic that has changed. Now the tariff impact is changing quickly to Livingston's point. So at the end of the day, it is becoming more complex. And I think the name of the game today is properly forecasting. You got to forecast early. You got to forecast properly, so that we have the ability of procuring on time and delivering on time. The days of having, you know, hundreds of SKUs available at any given time, yes, for high run rate SKUs, but anything that needs attention or anything that's above and beyond the core 20% that represents 80% of the run rate revenue, has got to be forecasted, and it's got to be forecasted soon enough so that the entire complex supply chain sees it, reacts to it, and forecasts proper delivery. So I think that the biggest element here is re-educating ourselves and re-educating the buyers, the end user customers, and properly giving us early enough forecast and the picture on how deployment is going to occur, the quantities required by when. So back to basics. That's what it is.
So and that goes to maybe Laura and you, but how does a VAR navigate this situation with fluctuation of rates, ordering, and its delays in delivery, right?
I think it goes back to forecasting again, right? Because if we, and when I say forecasting, and like Michelle was saying, right, we're talking, if you're a smaller VAR and you do 100 products a year with us, or you're a larger VAR and you're doing thousands of products with us a year, it's good for us to know what you're anticipating the next 6 months, because we can then allow manufacturing, order products, bring it into our warehouse, right, and get ahead of what those delays could be. We have, Candace said it, right, sometimes you have days and hours to react. And when we only have days and hours to react because we get held at the port, we have no control over it. When it's held up someplace, there's no control that we can manage that. But what we're trying to do is really take that snapshot of what you did the past, let's say 12 months, 24 months, and work individually with the VARs, because maybe the portfolio has changed a little bit on our side due to what those tariffs and costs are, that we can help them redefine their portfolio and what they can sell and what we can get in here quicker with less impact on tariffs for them. So it's forecasting, it's communicating, you know, like I said, from the smallest VAR to the largest VAR, understanding what that looks like coming up for the next 6 months to a year.
Maybe adding to what she's saying, I guess, and I said it just a couple of minutes ago, the high run rate items that are available on a regular base, I'm of the opinion, if there's one favor we could do to the end user customer is recommend, for starters, some of these high run rate available items that don't impose restrictions or that create delays, like we encounter with specialized queue. And we're, I guess, very sensitive to procuring as much run rate items. By the way, we've never had as much inventory dollar figure wise as we have today. But again, we've got to limit the exposure that we may have to the thousands of SKUs that are out there. Therefore, we're working towards delivering what is high run rate. And I guess one of the messaging that I could say to the community here is try to position as much as possible the high run rate items that are available at any given time, right? Not easy, don't get me wrong, not easy, but
Not easy.
Yeah, not easy.
Painful.
I just wanted to add into that discussion too, that the derivative list has now increased exponentially. So, you know, certain commodities that you never thought you would have to break out, just as an example, I'll throw it out there, condensed canned milk. So now it comes in a tin can or an aluminum can. Now at time of importation, that needs to be broken out. So what is the cost or the value of the aluminum or tin can and what is the cost of the condensed milk. And so on the tin can portion, that derivative will attract additional tariffs just because it's been identified by the US under Section 232 or 301. It's the same if you're importing paint. Another great example. Paint's always been imported with one value for the paint and the container it comes in. Now it has to be broken down because it's a tin pail. So that, again, there needs to be a price and a value associated with the tin pail, and then the value of the actual paint itself. So it's become very complex and very complicated in terms of identifying all those different components and the values that are associated with those.
That could get really tricky to calculate a basic surcharge. So
that's right.
Candice, what role does the government play in helping those small businesses to navigate the risk of all those increasing costs, because we know from one day to the other they change? And are there any programs that are being considered or should be considered that would help small businesses in this environment?
Yeah, there are a couple of programs. There are a couple of remission programs that importers can apply for duty relief with CBSA. It's an entire process that has to be undertaken in an application, and it really supports where an importer has incurred financial liability as a result of the new requirements. In those instances, CBSA would do the undertaking and review along with Treasury and determine if in fact there's been egregious financial liability that the importer has incurred, and then grant a remission authority, which would kind of allow for duty remission, so the duty is not applicable. It's taking a long time for those particular applications to be processed, but that's not helpful when you're importing into the US because there are no programs available like the one I just mentioned in Canada.
Okay.
Maybe a parentheses to what she has just said. So when we're talking channel, 99% of the time, the reseller is not the importer of record. Distribution is, and that's what one of our role is. So we're facing these challenges, yet sometimes the partner community may feel and think that we're challenging, but we are being really challenged because we are the importer of record. And if we do not do things properly, we're 100% exposed to these additional tariffs, which at the end is, it's going to be transferred to you and it's going to be transferred to the end user. But if we want to do a good job for the Canadian community, how do we ensure that we avoid and take advantage of all programs possible to not encounter these tariffs, right?
Hey, Paula Duke, sorry to interrupt, but Bob Flint, looks like we have access to him now if you want to engage him in the conversation. We'll see if his audio works.
Hi, Bob. Not yet. So thinking about, again, our VAR, and you're right, Michelle, to say that, a lot of this has an indirect impact on us because you guys kind of absorb the headaches in the process. What do you think our audience and our VAR and ISVs need to know about the current tariff trade situation that we haven't discussed yet, things that we haven't even thought of yet that affects our day-to-day?
I would say number one, let's collectively re-educate the end users, your customers. I think the picture of supply chain is dramatically impacted by one, I'll repeat, it was COVID with challenges with supplies, and now these tariffs. So the world of supplying, the supply chain has literally converted to something totally new. So I'm saying, let's educate the end users on, again, we've said it, proper forecasting, maybe going with a product or a config that makes more sense, that is more available. So that's item number one. I think item number two is let's be disciplined into not delivering a surprise to the customer. I think being totally transparent and being honest with the customer base, because sometimes we try to avoid this and avoid that and not talk about this or that. I think the world of businesses today, we've got to be honest with the customers and we got to say how it is. So I think honesty, integrity, and educating the end user is key into the new world of supply chain, because I believe that this is not going to change in any shape or way short term. People that believe that tariffs that are going to be going away early in 26, I don't think so. All the indicators are showing that we're in for quite some time. So we may as well educate ourselves and educate our customers into that new reality. That's what I would say. Last, sometimes the exchange rate is in our favor. I'll give you an example. Some of the tariffs have been 7 or 8%. Well, 2 months ago, the exchange rate had dropped from the beginning of the year to August by about 10 points or close to 10 points. So play the exchange rate, right? The exchange rate, it's gone up, back up a little bit. But when the exchange is favorable, I think going to the customer and saying, okay, there's been a rate increase on the product, but there's a favorable exchange rate to your advantage, it may be time to buy. So please take in consideration the fluctuation of the dollar, especially when it's to our advantage.
It's been a little hard lately because it's been,
I know,
pretty stable, but yeah, when we can get a 10% drop, that would make a difference.
At the end, and I'll close with this. Sorry to say, but there's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that we should do that will modify this. The complexity is too much, right? And like Candace said, it changes almost daily. It changes every week. So it's tough to manage something that is not under control.
Paul, can you hear me now?
Yes, hi, Bob.
Yes.
Bob?
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm trying everything in my power to contribute to this phenomenal conversation. I've been listening as I'm trying to work through these technical issues. And one of the things as everyone, all the way from Michelle, Candace, Laura, we're talking about monitoring a very volatile situation, right? Very oversimplified scenario. One of the troubles the importer of record has, as everyone has alluded to, is we pay the bill as soon as it lands. We have to anticipate what's going to happen on the day it lands. Now I'm doing air quotes. You can't see my fingers on when it lands, because that's not necessarily true. And here's what the point I wanted to add from the very beginning is that there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of headlines. There's a lot of social media that says, here's what's going to happen. Read between the lines of what I just said. But I just want to read, the challenge truly is, and we learned this firsthand, is you need to prepare based on that, but the tariff does not officially become approved and announced until several things happen. The first thing is, and this is the US Customs, the president has to sign an executive order. That executive order has to be delivered and logged by the federal registry. It is not official until that registry, they publish the executive order with all the details. And sometimes that happens after the shipments have already left the port. My point being is we need to be timely, but the biggest challenge is the only information we have in the beginning is the noise, the headlines, the tweets, the social media, only to find out when it lands, we've either overreacted or we didn't react fast enough. And we still have to pay the bill the day that it lands at the port. So I just want to caution everybody and let you know that just one part of my contribution is to say, we have a challenge of just understanding what the rules are, because they are ever changing, and they're changing after we think we already know what it's going to be. Thank you.
Well, and I think also that from when this all started, it was very confusing to everybody. What needs to be tariffed? What component is going to be tariffed? Like Candace just said, right? We're looking at things like carnation milk in the aluminum can. You know, somewhere, somehow, everybody's affected by it, no matter if it's in your business, your personal life, your dog, your pets, right? Somebody, you're affected, and you just may not see it because either it's being absorbed or there's been price increases. There's not necessarily, when I go to the grocery store, they don't have a line item that says tariff on it, right?
Right.
Communicating, Michelle said it, communicating to the VARs, to their customers, making them aware that, you know, we don't know what it could be, because if it's $10, $5, that's easy for anybody to, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's more tolerable and we can absorb it easier. If it does have to be passed on, it's passed on. But when you get into the thousands of dollars, sometimes when you're affected, that's difficult to swallow, and it does get passed. But you know, we seem to be somewhat in a much more stable environment when it comes to the tariff, because now that we've been experiencing this for a longer period, we know a little bit more. It's easier to kind of navigate. Bob said it right. We don't know until it actually physically hits the port what's going to happen. But we are now more educated. We know, we have more clarification of down to a component of what that means. I literally looked up Canadian and tariffs, and like the getting itemized down to a aluminum can, and there were pages and pages and pages of information on there to go through. So when we said that our offices, Michelle's office, anybody that's going through this, you know, it takes hours to dissect some of this information on those invoices. So in the background, how it's affecting our operations team, spending those hours going through the correct forms, making sure we're documented. Candace rolled off a couple of codes that I don't know what those codes mean. Candace, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
But you know, they're going through all that documentation to make sure it's recorded correctly, and when it hits the port, we can get it to pass and go, right? Kind of like a Monopoly game, play your $200 and pass. But you know, not that stable is the right word, but it's somewhat stable now, so we can predict things a little bit easier. But like Bob just said as well, we don't know. It could change quickly overnight through all those, you know, social medias and the information that he just shared. So yeah, it's still difficult, but I think it's somewhat easier now to understand.
Yeah, I just wanted to add too, if I can. So the reference to section 232 and 301, those are really industry sectors that are subject to anti-dumping duty and countervailing duty, which is over and above the duty rate. So President Trump implemented IEEPA under the Emergency Act and implemented the initial round of tariffs. And then those are questionable because it's gone to the Supreme Court, whether they will stick or whether, you know, the Supreme Court will find that he didn't have the authority and the power under IEPA to implement them. So there's also the avenue of taking a look at goods that are being imported into the country. They're dumped at below what the market price and value should be, and therefore then they become subject to countervailing and anti-dumping duty. So again, it's over and above. There's a number of cases in the US that's open now, and we anticipate another 16 will be forthcoming. So that's why that I made reference to the derivative list. That's why that list is really important, because there's a lot of everyday kind of products and commodities that are being listed there that are now suddenly subject to that additional tariff under derivative.
If I may throw one positive comment on all of this, you know, the partner community should embrace the channel looking at ways to bypass US soil. And I guess suppliers, manufacturers, Laura, Bob, ourselves, we're really doubling down on how could we avoid US soil when we import. And I'm of the opinion that if it stabilizes, like you said, Laura, we're going to find ways, and we've already started working towards this. We are going to find ways of procuring products without it legally touching US soil. There are ways it touches the US soil and it is legally not touching US soil. It is called free trade zone or bonded warehouses. So you're seeing a spike in enabling free trade zones in the US and North America, so that theoretically, legally, the product doesn't hit US soil, therefore not subject to tariffs. So there's work in the background being done with manufacturers, with distributors like ourselves, in order to avoid as much as possible that the product hits legally US soil. But it's in the works, right? Not easy.
And it's assuming you can't really build the stock in warehouse in minutes, so it could be a longer process, right? But tariffs are volatiles, and it is totally volatile environment right now. You know, one tweet at midnight and that's it, right? Like, so looking at this, so I think you answered part of my next question is how does all this affects our supply chain, but how can we plan as a VAR in the same environment? So as a VAR, you know, PartnerTech says, you know, plan, try to have this conversation. Blue Star says, yeah, you know, if you plan with me, we'll stock for you, right? We'll work with you. How can we plan in that very volatile environment of, you know, tomorrow there's another 10% of tariff, right? So how do we kind of try to address that and try to mitigate that environment as much as possible? Is it totally impossible?
You know, it's difficult right now because it's so fluid, right? And it's constantly changing. And the other comment I wanted to add is USMCA, CUSMA, is coming up for review, right? So comments need to be submitted by November 3rd for both Canada and the US. And there's a lot, actually, I'm in DC this week. I was here for a trade mission on USMCA. And it's interesting because there are some that think there'll be minor tweaks to the original agreement, in which case, you know, to address, you know, disparity between Mexico, US, and Canada. And then there's others that are very concerned that, you know, President Trump in the United States won't negotiate, I don't want to say a fair deal, but not in alignment with what Canada and Mexico has today in the current agreement. And, you know, any party to the signatory to that agreement can withdraw. So that's the worst case scenario, because we don't believe bilateral agreements are good for any country. I mean, trilateral is the way that we want to see this proceed. But that is in the background too. 95% of goods coming into Canada today under, you know, CUSMA are duty free. If that agreement changes substantially, importers could be looking at additional duties. So I just want to put that out there. I think it's something to keep on companies' radar screens in terms of, you know, 2026 will be the actual review period, but there is commentary going in now in terms of what that impact is to industry and trade.
Even more volatility and
Exactly.
uncertainty in the future.
So maybe one comment that sums it all, Paul and people in the audience. What is true is what you see today. And I think the messaging is build your solutions, build your ROI, build whatever based on today's reality. And people and customers, and I understand the uncertainty in the market, people that are saying, I'll wait 6 months before executing, or I'll wait 3 months before I execute on that project. I guess the education of the end user goes through this also, saying, we don't know what this is going to look like in 6 months from now. If you've got a good ROI today, you may want to execute today based on real numbers that we have today, because no one on the call here knows what the future holds. No one.
And as a VAR, we have those conversations with our customers, as you know, on a regular basis about what will it be tomorrow, and it's like, and you know, Candace brought back the CUSMA agreement that could even make it worse next year. So
Correct.
Anyways, those are unfortunate conversations that we have with customers also on a regular basis. Anything else anybody wants to add before we go to the Q&A?
I would just like to add or reinforce what Michelle said earlier. It's really about communication. We work very closely with our freight forwarder. Of course, the factories are part of it. How do we as a manufacturer absorb as much of these volatile cost structures as much as possible? Because of course, if we take any cost that we see and add it to our product, we're just transferring that cost and surprising not only the distributors, but the resellers, everybody downstream. So yeah, the communication timely. I know that we in Blue Star are in communication on a regular basis, just trying to look for ways to minimize the volatility so it's not impacting or affecting the channel as much as it certainly has or will in the future.
Thank you, Bob. We'll open for questions. Christopher, Jim, if you have questions on from the members.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you, panel. We do have a question here from Tim Shane from King Corp. Tim, if we are able to unmute you, and if you could unmute yourself, or I could read the question for you.
How's that?
Here we go. Hey, Tim, welcome.
Hey, Tim.
Hi.
Hey, Jim.
I think my question was discussed. Hey, Laura. Hi, everybody. I think the question was discussed. The challenge we run into, the reality of the challenge we run into is we've had, and I feel sorry, I swear to God, I feel sorry for the buyers. I honestly swear to God, I feel sorry for buyers in every aspect. We've had manufacturers that, as soon as they hear the executive order, they hold off for about a week or a month or whatever. Okay, it's going to come through, and then they institute a price increase after a couple months. But then we find out that maybe that product is not subject to the increase, but they put an increase in anyway, assuming that the increase is going to go in. So we get all these increases in, and guess what happens? The customer goes, how can you justify a $300 increase, or how can you justify a 30% increase? So what do? They go hunting. Dr. Google starts going, oh, I've got this one in China, I've got this one, and they get it directly. So that puts pressure on the VARs. And my biggest question really is, I know everybody talks about, and I'll qualify this by saying, I know everybody's talking about having forecasting and having true, transparent conversations with the customer. But at the end of the day, our customers are dealing with the economy as well. So they're holding off on purchases. They won't buy until they have to update or they have to, buy something. And as a VAR, I'm so concerned about a secure supply. I don't want to go off brand. There's so much value in working with our partners like PartnerTech and Zebra and DataLogic and those kind of guys. So I just don't know how to navigate that, knowing full well that I can't meet some of the requirements that the manufacturers are looking for. So trying to find a safe, secure, competitive supply chain is very important to me. I just don't know how we can do that because everybody's saying, hey, it's going to change with the wind. We don't know. So that's the biggest challenge from our part.
I'm going to say that I was in the middle of what I think Tim just described when the headlines were saying China was going to 150% tariff. We did two things immediately when we started hearing that. One is we had already started moving things out of China, but we still had product coming in. We told the factory, hold those shipments. That's kind of the question, Paul, you asked me originally where I couldn't respond. What were we doing to respond to this? We were making decisions to hold shipments to see if that tariff, the headline was going to hold. We also did a second thing when we heard that. We started to put a plan together that if it did hold, this is what we were going to do. Fortunately, we held back long enough, but it was just a roll of the dice. The 150% only if it did go, I don't remember if it went into effect or whatever. And to Tim's point, as the reseller, the VAR, that you guys are left holding the bag at the end, whatever decision we make, whether we are too premature and we implement our price increases, or we wait too long and then we're like, okay, we just got billed, we need to increase our prices immediately when it arrives. My point being is that there's so much volatility and what is fact versus when do we respond. We need to be timely. So Tim, I don't have an answer to your frustration. I can just say that I'm on the front line seeing it firsthand. And we're just trying to mitigate the volatility as much as we can. And I'm not saying even we are perfect, but we really are trying to stay on top of it.
I know the one thing that we tried to do at PartnerTech was not just do a flat increase right across the board. We did take the time, hats off to our team, because it took them a long period to look at our product list and look at the items that are coming in. And what we did find is there were some products that were not going to be affected from the tariff, right, when they came over, as extreme as we thought that they would be. So we didn't have to take that kind of a hit coming in. So, to your point, Tim, evaluating what your portfolio looks like, maybe there's something to move, something to put in place of something else. I'm actually here in Montreal this week and talking to VARs that are here. I do understand their pain firsthand from speaking to them, because they are trying to only buy things that hit Canada, right? How can they bypass the US and not have things come across the border to where they're having that extra impact? So, hearing that firsthand, taking that back to our team as well, we are every day looking at our products, every day evaluating what is going to be tariffed and what isn't, to the fullest extent. So let's work together on those things, work with your distributor for sure, because together I think, hopefully you can come up with a good solution and a compromise to what you are having those larger impacts on.
In in the reality of the business, and it resonates with me because I was a VAR for about 10 years. We're never going to stop online buying and online purchasing. There will always be cheaper somewhere in the world. There's no easy fix. It's always existed. It will always be there. The one thing that I'm hearing from Tim is that the market is more and more sensitive to, oh, there is an increase and justify the increase, or I'm going to be looking and shopping online. That is a tough one. I don't think there is an easy one fix to this. It's very dynamic, and what some are doing what needs to be done properly, justifying the country of origin and the reason of the increase, but just quickly, because it is all based on the country of origin. If you've got a device that has got 25 components coming from 10 countries being assembled in Vietnam, what's the country of origin? Laura and Bob, you know what I'm talking about. It is not easy, right? So sometimes they don't take any risk. How is the US administration going to be assessing the product? And they may say subject to tariff. So the manufacturer in their defense are going to say, let's increase in case of, but it's not an easy way of validating if it's subject to tariffs or not. It's complex.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everybody. We have about 5 minutes left, and we do have a question from Nash Kumar from Hanasys. Nash, can you test your microphone?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hey, welcome.
Hi, Nash.
Thank you very much. So more than a question, if I'm a Canadian reseller and if I ask manufacturers and distributors, who, by the way, I know Blue Star is working on that new concept of inventory is not technically landing in US. I think that's a remarkable creative solution to the problem. But I want to go back to what Tim said is, when customers see a 30%, 25% increase, and then I want to go back to what Paul said, the currency fluctuation added to tariff. My question is, why does hardware needed in Canada ship to United States in the first place? Why can't it? So here is what I would say. It may sound like a sales pitch, but what we are doing is we have taken a different approach towards Canada business. We have decided to ship made in Korea products directly from the factory in Korea to Canada. It does two things. Not only the reseller is not hit with tariff because we're not paying for it either. Not only they don't get hit with tariffs, they also don't pay double handling fee from Korea to United States and then United States to Canada. We have negotiated a lower profit with our distributor, and which has allowed us, and in addition to that, we are bringing inventory and consignment to Canada now, directly from Korea. So 4 things that are happening. First, we're avoiding shipping to United States, which means resellers not paying tariff. Second, we're avoiding multiple handling from one warehouse to one country to another. So there's cost savings there. Third, we are offering consignment inventory to our distributor. So the cost of capital for them, except for the warehouse space that they're providing, cost of capital is 0 for them. And fourth, both our distributor and Hanasys have taken a made a decision to take a lower profit on Canada business. So in the next 4 or 5 weeks, we will start seeing harnesses inventory directly shipped from Korea to Canada. And it has allowed us to bring prices down to lower than what resellers were paying during COVID supply chain crisis. So in the next 4 or 5 weeks, we believe that we will be able to help Canadian resellers buy a product that's locally stocked, locally supported from a warranty standpoint. We and our distributors are keeping people employed in Canada, and you don't have to go off brand because we do offer local warranty. So my question is, why don't other because it's painful for everybody, right? Existing situation is painful. What we are working on is painful. We just have to pick which is less painful. We believe what we are trying to do is less painful for the market. That's just my question and addition.
Yeah, who wants to weigh in on that? And then we also have one more question from the audience too, if we're able to get to it. Who wants to respond to Nash?
I'll try to.
Can.
Oh,
Oh,
is
go
that
ahead,
Bob
Bob.
first? Yeah, Bob and then
Yeah,
Michelle.
Yeah, so what I took some notes, Nash, as you were talking, and the reality of why things are still hitting the US and then going to Canada, though working with people like Blue Star trying to mitigate that, getting it directly into Canada, is because of historically there were no tariffs. The supply chain is set up to go into the US. It was economical to just bring it in the US as a central point of distribution and send it over and export it into Canada or into Latin America. The first administration was the first time we started seeing it. The first step was to move it out of China because that was the first. The bottom line is we are trying to unwind the historical supply chain methods and the pricing and everything that's been built up. It's happened so quickly. So Nash, as you indicated, is it the right way? It is certainly an option. Certainly we're looking at it, but historically there was no tariff. It made sense to bring it in the US for volume purposes and then export to the other countries.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob. Michelle, you want to respond? And then again, we have one more question for Candace. I'm warning everybody, to all our affiliates, we'll be going over a little bit, but we won't be going over like Game 3 of the World Series, like 18 innings long or anything like that. So Michelle, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. So the supply chain is working in the direction that you have described. The reason it still goes through the US is very simple. Consolidation. I can't see a Paul that has 10 POS terminals that he wants to purchase to procure directly from foreign countries. Just the cost of custom and freight is going to kill him. So products have got to be consolidated. Therefore, it is logical that it hits US soil. Now, having said that, if we can build enough volume to procure directly without touching US soil, that's basically what we are working on, but this is not a commercial meeting here. So we are very active in doing this. It is in the process, but there's got to be minimum quantities so that it makes sense, because the cost of a container has skyrocketed, price-wise, skyrocketed. It's as pricey as air freight now. And that's one example. When it hits Vancouver port a couple of weeks ago, the wait time of a ship at sea in Vancouver before being unloaded was 2 weeks. So it sits out there in the port for 2 weeks before being unloaded. And then it's freight from Vancouver into Toronto or Montreal, which is not cheap. So at the end, I understand, but there's, again, costs and complexity around doing this direct.
Thank you, Michelle. Candace, do you have time to stick around for one more question? I know we're going over time. You do, great. Hey, Tim Shane, you want to pose your question to Candace, who has been a wonderful guest for our community today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody's input, Bob and Laura and Michelle. Candace, in other industries, are they recognizing that the supply chain coming through the US up to Canada is changing or is changed for foreseeable generation or maybe 2 generations? Are there other industries that are recognizing that and trying to go north to south with
Yeah, 100%. I think it's impactful in really every type of industry sector. So everyone's trying to take a look at their supply chains, diversify. Excuse me. There was a good comment from, goods that are coming, originating from offshore, and they don't go in transit through the United States, they come direct to Canada. And the benefit there is too, if there's an additional trade agreement in place, then you can take the benefit of that and the reduction of duty at time of import versus, transiting through another country. So there are a lot of industry sectors that are very concerned about the environment, the impact of the supply chain, how do they change their sourcing? Is there in fact opportunity to source, offshore in other countries? What does that look like? There may be a duty savings on one side, but the cost to market is exponentially increased, therefore it becomes a wash. So it is a concern. I mean, the comment was made earlier, where trade is evolving and changing, and there's been so many trade agreements and negotiations that are ongoing, but my sense is this environment is here to stay for probably the next 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. So tough to plan that far ahead, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
You bet. Yes, thank you is the phrase for right now. So thank you very much to everybody who attended. Thanks for the questions that we received from the audience. Big thanks to our panel, Paul Leduc, Bob Flint, Laura Coggins, Michelle Sirwan, our special community guest, Candace Sider from Livingston International. Also, thanks to our annual sponsors. Again, calling out in particular, our platinum sponsor is Blue Star, gold sponsor is CoCard, Epson, Heartland, and ScanSource. Thanks to our Canadian community sponsors, Blue Star, Citizen, DataCap, Heartland, Ingenico, NRS, PartnerTech, Shift4, Star Micronics, and Toshiba. And again, we hope to see everybody soon, and we definitely hope to see everybody February 1st through 4th at RSPA Inspire in Hawaii. It is Networking Nirvana. We would love to see you there. Hey, thanks everybody for weighing in. You are what makes the RSPA community great, right? Everybody pulling together, sharing their perspective, sharing their knowledge, all raising our IQ. Thanks everybody, and have a tremendous rest of your day. Goodbye.